They don't have a Baba Kama Gemara, what? Okay. Okay. Let me, before we start, see, I chose this simon since we learned Chosh Mishpat, and now we got into the gear of thinking of what's the. It's a whole different limit Chosh Mishpat. So we had to taste a little bit of monetary things. So I want to say over a very famous Shulchan Aruch in the Kintas Achlan, twice he says it. In Hilchos Pesach he says it, in Chosh Mishpat he says it. You know about the Kintas Achlan, there's a whole pilpul. I want to just say over it, there's a very famous kasha where the Rabbi asks twice. One, he says there's a halacha in Hilchos Pesach that when a goy gives a yid chometz to watch. Guy gave me chometz to watch, and I have a chrayis on it. Chrayis means that if it gets lost, it gets stolen, I'm responsible for it. If it's not, I'm a choikis in the Shiurim, 2 days I'm a chaba, but I have responsible over it. Since my responsibility over it, then there's a din, I'm oive bal yiro by imutza. That means you cannot have chometz in a goy, and your rishus if you are responsible for it. Even as a shemechinam, commanding the shayim. So the Shulchan Aruch says you should burn it. So the Rav asks, how can I have a right to burn the guy's chometz? Yeah, that's. And the second kash he has, there's a maril that says that in the good old days, the main Yiddish business was halvus, is banking. You know, if you know history, the goyim in times of the Rishonim didn't allow the Jews to be professionals. They didn't allow them to be a lawyer. I don't know about a prosecutor, but didn't let them do any professions. And so what did they do? They all became bankers. So the Yidden all had mishkoinis, collaterals. Says in the Maril, would use it Pesach at the Seder night. So again, the Rav asked the kasha, how could you use it? You're shoy shalom adas. You know what shoy shalom? You're not allowed to use someone's item without his permission. He gave it to you as a collateral. I did not give you permission to use it. So there's a famous Shulchan Aruch's opinion, which is known in the Lamda Shevelt and the Yeshiva Shevelt. He says like this: there's a famous Gemara Bava Kama, Daf Kif Yid Gimel Amud Beis. That's 113. I say 113 base, second side, and Bava Kama. The Gemara says Rav Asher was going on the road next to a vineyard, and he says to his shamash, "Do me a favor, you know, if it's a goy, check if it's a goy. If it's not a goy, if it's a goy, take some grapes. If it's a yid, don't take the grapes." And the Gemara, it doesn't say goy, it says kuti, but it means a goy. So the goy comes out from the fence hiding. He says, if it would be a goy, you would steal. He says, no, I would have given the money. So Tosis and the Rosh says, the truth is, the whole Gemara is going, Geneves Akim is also. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to steal from a goy, a penny not. Not allowed to steal, unfortunately, certain people think that Geneves Akim mitzvah. When the Shulchan Aruch basket, Geneves Akim is an Issa Daraisa. The Rav paskins that way, the Shach paskins that way, the Rambam paskins. You're not allowed to steal from a goy, period. So the Gemara says, so what's pshat in the Gemara over here? Okay. So that's what the Rav is machadish. By goy, you're not allowed to steal if you don't plan to pay. That means I'm not allowed to take something away from a goy. If I plan to pay, I'm allowed to steal it. And that's the mushal. By yid, I'm not allowed to be goinev. I'm not lemekat. Mekat means to tease him. Take it away, and I'll give him another one. If the kid said, it comes out from the sugya, they're allowed to burn the guy's house down and pay him. A yid says, you're not allowed to, even though you want to pay him $100 million. You have no right to do it. He wants his items. But goy, this doesn't apply. But you can't steal to take it. That means the Rabbi Asher Taki said, if it was going to be a goy, I was going to take now and pay afterwards. By Yid, I'm not allowed to take and pay afterwards. I mean, Yid have to have his permission, even though the grapes are made to sale, but he's not selling them. It's on the side of the road now. So the Rav is mechadish that a shoyel shaloi midas is mitah goy.
Do you have to pay for the use?
No, there's nothing geneva. Shoyel shaloi midas is a ganav, but goy that doesn't exist. Now this is very, very important. I don't know about this neighborhood. When I first came to LA, and the young Israel on La Brea, so you can't park in the morning. They're all parking Ralph's. And, but is that Shosh Lamandah? How could you park in Ralph's? So that's when I bumped in, this goes back 30 years, I found the Shulchan Aruch. I was trying to find a heter. I always tell people, Isser, everyone can say it's also, but I was trying this, according to the Rav is saying there's no din Shosh Lamandah. What do you say?
Here it's different because you're preventing a customer from parking in that place.
It's not so big. The Rav's parking is huge. It's huge.
You're saying the bank parking lot across the street is not a bank?
Which bank?
Right across the street. In the shul.
My shul you're talking about?
You talk about
Yeah.
the first.
They don't allow parking. There's a guard. If you're a client, they let you park. That's how it works there. So this is it's a new concept. But going.
It's not nothing to do with you paying back. It's just the fact that
It has to do.
No.
you can borrow it without him knowing.
Because the only issa bagoy is to destroy something, not to pay him, to take something, not to pay. But if you take and you pay him for the value, that is okay.
You're taking a lot and giving it
So
back.
when you drive out, you're giving him a spot back.
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to say it. I've said it once before that always the people ask me, "Are you allowed to copy software?" I'm not telling you to do it, but what is it? What is it? A misdemeanor, or what is it if you copy software? But anyways, so let me say, Api Halacha, why there is no Isser to copy software by Goy, not by Yid. Why? Imagine I sneak into Microsoft. What's his name? Forgot his name. Bill Gates. I sneak into his house and I borrow his hat brush without his permission. I brush my hat. I put down the hat brush. Was allowed to do it? Yes. Shosham das and go in mitten. So I took a disk, put it into my computer, and put it right back. That's what I did. Well, no, that's exactly what I did. There is no, in the Torah, there is no intellectual property of the Torah. One spoke about that.
Something else.
The analogy feels because you put the hat back, you didn't keep it. But here, when you give the software,
So what did I get? I got intelligent property. No, it's not that. That's a whole separate issue. I stole his wisdom. There is no such a thing in the Torah, intellectual property. There is no such a thing. There is such a thing, als dina de malchisedina. Maybe there is such a thing, which the Sefer says, that dina malchisedina, if the dina malchisedina makes, that's a question, so if other makes business, people should create, and we need that dina malchisa, so dina malchisedina, well, I don't want to go into dina malchisedina, I want to stick to Hilchos Sukka. I once said I'll give a long shir about it. It's much too complicated to say all the shit is, but this is the Shulchan Aruch. So he's saying that there is no din shoyl shloim medas ba'goy. The kitzer, so you're allowed to park in Ralph's. I'm sure in this neighborhood you have the problem too, whatever. You park someplace, there's no parking except, and people do park. I'm not saying you should do it, but I'm saying there is no din shoyl shloim medas ba'goy. That's halacha.
But then you have to pay them?
What do you say?
You have to compensate them?
No, there's no din.
Give him back the spot.
You just give him back his spot. There's no shoyl shloim medas.
Period of time, you take it.
So I use this hat brush a period of time. He doesn't want me to use his hat brush. Does nothing to do what he wants. He doesn't want. Nothing to do.
So with software is okay also?
Software is okay, but there's a separate issue. I won't speak about it. I want to focus on Sukka now. So why I chose this simon now? This simon is an interesting simon. Hilchos Sukka. What happens? Now let's start with a lulav and esrog. Everyone knows that an esrog has to be yours. First 2 days has to be yours. That means, and what does yours mean in the Torah? That's another question. Let me explain something. It could be it's yours, totally. You could be a shoyel, you borrowed it. So a shoyel is not yours. A rented is also not yours. I rent an esrog the first day I was not yoitzer. A shoyel the esrog the first day I'm not yoitzer. So there's different types of ownership. There's totally yours. I borrowed an object is mine. I have rights using it. I rented an object. It's still not good. And hefker is of course not good for an esrog. I pick up an esrog. It's not no one's. It's hefker. I say I don't want it to become mine. I'm also not yoitzer. It has to be totally yours. A Sukka, now we're going to learn, is very interesting. That's how much yours, not yours. We're going to learn this halacha. This is a famous, difficult in the Achronim. Some sefer, the Pnei Yeshua already, and I think even before the Pnei Yeshua, I think they bring down from the Kaisia place, who trying to understand what Sukkah is, the halachas. The lumdas, not the practical, but to understand, we'll soon see. Because one of the biggest problems they had, so we have to thank, whenever I learn such a halacha, I always say I thank the Rabbi Shalom. They had no room, the Jewish people had to make a sukkah. Literally, there was no, when you lived in the ghettos, there was no backyard. We, live in LA without a backyard, there's like, who knows what, you gotta have a backyard. But I'm saying they didn't have. Where did they make this sukkah? On the streets. So then that was the mini in Klal Yisrael. To make it, how can you make it on the street? It's not yours. And the Goyim don't want you to make it on the street. That's the famous question which they have to cope with. That
Everyone has a question. Chabad makes sukkahs on the street. That's the issue.
They would make it on the street.
They make big sukkahs.
But they get permission today. They get permission, the government.
Sometimes yeah, sometimes not.
Sometimes they just take it down in 7 days. Okay. All right, let's start. Us Gimel. You have it, yeah? Us Gimel. I have a different print. I brought a different print. Alter Rebbe, which one did you? Yeah. So it starts Us Gimel. Alpha Pi Sh'amre Torah. No, not that one. At the pages. Okay. Alpha Pi Sh'amre Torah. Chag Sikos Tasa L'chore B'Yisai. The Torah said Chag Sukkos. Yeah, Gimel. Even though Torah says Chag Sikos Tasa L'chu, what does means L'chu? Yours. He says L'chu Mishal L'chu. It should be yours. Kloimer Shetei Sikos Shaloch Lo Shel Chaverchu. That's what it seems to say. Imagine the sukkah has to be yours. Imagine what will drive us up nuts. You get a lula for each child. You're gonna make a sukkah. You're gonna make a 10-bedroom, a 10-room sukkah. How's this gonna work? No, that's why. Let's finish. If you borrow a sukkah, why? The kivish nechnes b'rshus harei kishaloi. Now the chroinim Amadayik and the Rab's words that he's saying, and sukkah has to be yours, but sukkah is shoyel, it's enough yours if you're shoyel on it. Shoyel means you borrowed it. You see, when I want to explain something in Chosh Mishpit, where lots of people have no idea. If I tell someone, can I borrow your hammer for a week? And he gives it to me, and he comes the next day, he says, I need it back. I have a kinyan for 1 week. Just like if I would go to someone, I want to rent your hammer for a week. And I'll pay you at the end of the week. You can't ask it back. They used to pay rent at the end. Today we pay the beginning. But if a guy says, I want to rent an apartment, he says, middle, you can't kick me out. I made a kinyan for a month, for a year. So a person's a shoyel. I said, can you borrow me your hammer or an electric saw? And I pick it up and I need it for 1 week. You come the next day, he says, I happen to need it. I could say to you, go fly a kite. This week is mine. It's not yours. I have a kinyan. You know what kinyan means? I would say better in English. You are the ownership on the thing for a week. It's called a kinyan paytas. It's not my, what's his name? See, a shoyel, I want to explain something. If lightning strikes it, I have to pay for it. If I borrowed your hammer, and when was it? 94, there was an earthquake over here, if some of you know, the Northridge earthquake. So my neighborhood, there's a very interesting story happened. A guy borrows from someone, he's taking his mother-in-law back to the airport. So he borrowed from someone an expensive car, I forgot the name of this, not one of these expensive cars. It's a British car, I forgot the name. The kid's an expensive car. What?
Maybe a Jaguar.
A Jaguar. Oh, you know the story? No. Because your father knows the story, he told me. So it was a Jaguar, and he puts it in the driveway. Tomorrow morning, he's taking his mother-in-law to the airport. And that day, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. If you remember, it was 4:31. Monday morning was the earthquake. And a brake fell and smashed the car. And insurance said it's an act of the Rabbi Shalom, they're not paying. So the guy asked me, I says, you have to pay him. You're a shoyl? A shoyl doesn't make a difference. You borrowed the car, you're a shoyl. A shoyl is chayev ba'ansan. It doesn't help. If lightning strikes it, but that means it belongs to you, the car. I borrowed it, and I have a kinyan paytis in it. It belongs to me, the usage of it. That means the usage of a week usage, I have it. So the Rab learns, why, that Sukka, when the Torah says you should have a Sukka, doesn't have to be like an esrig, has to be yours 100%. It's enough that you have a kinyan paytis in it. So there's a famous question, the Achronim. Can I sit in a Sukkah of Hefker? Hefker, somebody made a Sukkah and he was mafker it. According to this, not. Hefker means, how you say Hefker in English? Abandoned. Abandoned. There's no ownership. The guy was mafker. So it's not mine. So I don't want to make a kinyan in it. Then, it's just, because the Rav is explaining, it has to be some part yours.
One second. If it's happier, why can't you just be kind?
If you want, I'm saying theoretical. Guy was not kind. I want to sit on it not to be kind. What do you say? Improvement? Well, you could make a kinyan, yes. There's the Rishonim hold. How could you make a man in Machlokes and Rambam and the Ravid? Some Rishonim learn just by sitting down and hefker, you lay down your kindness. Some you have to make yourself comfortable. Make something comfortable. Make a mattress and Machlokes and Rambam and the Ravid, I think, in the Rishonim.
If you don't want to apply,
They put lock, they don't think so. I don't think so. No. So anyways, it says, so this is the first chalik of his first part. That I show you makes it also yours, he says.
There's no assumption if you're walking down the street and hungry, the sukkah is not locked. You can't assume that you eat there.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to it in a minute. We're going to get it. He says, now this is going to be very tricky. The only thing we're mamat is a stolen sukkah. There's a contradiction. Only stolen. Chayli mashva hefke would be good. We have to finish and see the whole thing.
I have a foundation question. What mitzvah are we talking about?
Sukkah.
What, sitting in a sukkah?
Sitting in the sukkah.
living in a sukkah, living in a sukkah.
The sukkah, on sukkahs, there's a mitzvah to eat, sleep, drink, schmooze in the sukkah.
What about building it?
Yeah, there's no mitzvah to build it. There's no mitzvah to write film. I could have a sofer write it. I'm not a builder of sukkah. I got someone to build my sukkah.
If you sit in a hefker sukkah, you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, is it? That's the question. Are you yotze with it or not? If I was to see if I steal a sukkah and sit inside, I'm not yotze the mitzvah. It's not mine. Not because it's stolen. Not because the mitzvah buba aveda. Because it's not mine.
I guess the way I'm having a problem in sukkah, it's not like the other mitzvah. You're just, I never thought of it. Like, you're just yotze. Like, I went in and now I'm yotze. I don't have to go in
Well,
anymore. I mean, you.
Oh no.
Then you have to go in, it has to become yours. That's what's right.
You have to eat a meal in a sukkah.
Yeah.
So can you eat a meal in a sukkah?
Okay, that's what I'm asking. What mitzvah are we talking about?
There's a mitzvah to eat. The mitzvah, it's the second day sukkah, I want to lay down and sleep in the sukkah. And the sukkah is a stolen sukkah. I'm not, it's like I would have slept outside the sukkah. This is not a sukkah. It's like I would shake a lulav, an estig, which is not mine. I'm not yotze the first day. So far we see that we say it has to, a gezula is not, it's not a, yeah. Then it's a chen yoytz udam yirechus sukkah sheyesh le shitfes im chaveiroi. You have a partnership. He went in without his friend's issues. You're not called gezel. Kivin shedaskei nishtatvi became partners. Wow, this is very heavy duty. Let me see what the Rabbi is saying. We build the Sukka b'shitfus, partnership. So he says that, I don't need to ask him permission. And theoretically speaking, in Hilchos Shitfus says, even the guy screams, I don't want you. Beginning, when we became partners, you agreed that you're going to let me use the sukkah. That means you can't tell me, I'm not giving away my part of the sukkah. See, an esrik shel shitfen, you're not yoister. If I buy an esrik, we are so lucky. We buy for ourselves an esrik, for my children an esrik, and for the good old days. You read, I'm sure, Rebbe's stories. The entire cities didn't have one esrik. There was at Kufa, when entire Ukraine, in the times of Nachum Rest, the one esrik arrived in Ukraine. We have the nicest Lovin, the nicest Esregim, the nicest Hadassah. The Chetzonius, every mitzvah today is A1. We're just missing a little previous. But the Chetzonius is the best of the best. But anyways, so Esrik Shutfus, they used to buy by partnership the whole city. They used to raise money. People don't know this. Used to raise money, buy an Esrik, and everyone the first day. So everyone had to have a mind. Now everyone's giving it to you. Not you take it. Everyone is giving their portion to you, and then you give it. Everyone it has to be willing that everyone. By Sukka, but I don't need to do that. You could stay partner. It doesn't have to be 100% mine, Sukka, but you have to give me permission to use it. And since the beginning our partnership was made in that condition, so even though you're screaming to either one, I am using the Sukka with your full consent. Because when we made the original agreement, you consented that when I'm going to sit in the Sukkah, you're giving me permission. It doesn't have to become mine. I just need the permission as a shoyel, as a bar. And when you're sitting in the Sukkah, I'm giving you permission to use it. Okay? So someone asked, Yank, what you asked, the Rabbi brings it back, but he asked, so can I go into a Sukkah, Morgan? That is a Machlikas and the Achreinim. The Taz holds.
People in Karnais were educated, you put in the sukkah, cold, whoever wants to come in to eat, that means that they're clearly giving the shus.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah, but if you don't, but the question, that's a big Machlikas. Some Achreinim hold that just like you're allowed to borrow someone's film, because we have a klal that a person wants you to become a mitzvah, to use his film, doesn't mind. So to a sukkah is the same. Some say the Rabbi will see you later. It doesn't say it so clear. We'll soon see you later.
A practical example is, sometimes there's a restaurant that has a sukkah and you just want to eat in the sukkah, so you go into the restaurant and eat. So if you didn't buy food from there, they don't want you.
That's for sure. I like that notion. He says, in New York they have this. Yeah. So the restaurant has a sukkah, and let's say it's a fleischiger restaurant. So in the morning, the guy sneaks into the sukkah and eats there. The guy doesn't want that. The restaurant owner really doesn't want that to happen. So the Rav Philisiki Gzula, he says Pomishik Sheda. This is a big chiddush. Sometimes you can have even a stolen sukkah. You can make it. You could also be yotzei. How? How could you have a stolen sukkah? He says, "Areishin tikkun yisor sekusay." A yid made a sukkah. Ibu chaveiroi. His friend came. V'yitziyoi misikusay. He says, "Get out of here." Comes with a gun and he says, "Get out of the sukkah." V'gozla v'yushaba. And he sat in the sukkah. Yotza shene karka nigzelas. Let me say, let me explain this Gemara. We paskin karka eina nigzelas. Now this is an amazing concept, which is amazing of amazing. If 100 years ago, someone stole a piece of property, not 100 years, this has happened to all the Europeans. My grandparents were kicked out of, the Holocaust. Their property belonged to them. After the Holocaust, my parents didn't come home. They came to America. In Halacha, that house belongs to, that property belongs to the descendants. And it could be 1,000 years this way. Karka eina nigzelas. You cannot, it doesn't help yish. You know what yish means. When you lose an object, and I'm a yayish, I say, I'll never find it. If you pick it up, it's yours. Karka, that means like this. Let me give you a mosh. If a guy, I once tell you a story, it happened in December. A bar mitzvah bocher got a blanc montic, pronounce it. How do you say a pen? A Mont Blanc pen. It was a $120 pen. This goes back about 10 years ago.
The one to the car.
The what?
The one to the other car.
Oh. Anyway, so he had the pen and he picked it up. The boy wanted to see it. And as he was holding it, this was a bar mitzvah bocher, a boy was running in the yard, knocked it out of his hand, and there goes the $120 pen. So the Rebbe sent him, she come to din Torah to me. The Rebbe sent it's a shala, who has to pay? Remember the Rebbe brought the whole class to shul, learn me out to have din Torah. One that should see. It's a serious question. So I asked the boy, why did you pick it up? Did you pick it up without his permission? Did he know about it? You know, it was a very complicated question. Now, if, not the owner, another boy both picked it up. And the boy just knocked it out of his hand. So if he picked it up without permission, he was a shoy shalom das. Let's just assume he was a shoy shalom das. Then he's a ganav. Then if lightning strikes it, he has to pay him a $120 pen. He's holding the pen, and lightning struck the pen because he's a shoy shalom das. He's a ganav. So there's a famous question. I don't want to go into it. If you pick something up, not to steal, but to look at it. That's a whole Mesugi Bavakama. But let's say he picked it up to use it, not just to look at it. So he becomes a ganav on it. If lightning strikes it, you have to pay. But if I steal a piece of property and the water, the river overflows it, and you know the property becomes part of the river, is karka enig zealous. It never was stolen. I just kicked him out of the property. It never was mine. There is one man duma mesechtos bavakama. The whole karka enig zealous. That means if I kicked you out of the property, and I moved in, and the river, you know, overflowed it, I have to pay him a piece of property. But we pass in karka enig zealous. That means just because I kicked you off the property, it never left the owner. It's never yours. You're just a bully standing with a gun. That's it. But it belongs to the original owner. You understand? So what the Rav is saying over here, if I come in, the guy built a sukkah in his property, I come in, I just kick him out, and I want to sit in the sukkah. It's not stolen. It's Eidin Exalis. It never got stolen. I became a shoyel on it. Very difficult. What? Bekarka is not in shoyel shlemedas?
That's only what's on my property. It's on
No, I'm talking about your property. Right now, for.
What do you mean by the Ralph that belongs to the guy?
By what?
By parking with the Ralph.
We'll soon see the part. That's separate. We'll soon see why. But let's just focus on this Nekuda now. You understand what happened? So the Rav is explaining. This is based on the Gemara, but this is the problem how to explain the Gemara. The Rav learns again. I have a sukkah. I come into your sukkah. You build on your property. Just like I cannot steal your property. It's never. The karkanizah means I never became responsible for it. So if I take your pen without your permission, if lightning strikes it, and if the governor and if someone comes armed robber, I have to pay for it. But if I come, if I
picked up your sukkah, put it on my truck, and drove it to my house.
then becomes metaltalin. Then it's an exelis. On the karka, then it's a karka. One second, that's a big machlokes in the Chayne. Bir Halacha wants to learn, the Mishnah learns that he had to be refastened to the property. And the Rab, all the Chayim died from the Rab and other Chayim, they didn't say that. He didn't say that.
One second, I don't understand. The halacha only begins that you have to have rishus.
Has to be. That's the kasha.
Here is in halacha dalus that you don't need rishus.
That's the $20 million kasha. This is what, and not on the Rab. This is based on the sugi. How to explain it. But let's go on to see. This is the difficulty. But you understand what he's saying? The Rab is now saying that if I kicked you out of your sukkah, not pick up the sukkah. It's a sukkah. I have my porch. It's built in the sukkah. Because, let me just answer. Who asked about it was fastened to the ground? They all, and the Mishnah is very difficult. The schach, no, you're not supposed to fasten the schach. The schach is any metaltalum. So chroinim ask on the biralocha. You understand? The schach is not supposed to be fastened. And it shows not. So it's mashma from the Gemara, the fact that's on the property as a Shem property. That's a kasha why. That's a separate issue why. But that's what it says. Now, what it says over here, if I kicked you out of the property and I moved in, then the karka becomes an exelis. It's like I became a shoyel shlemedas. In karka, there's no din shoyel shlemedas. There is such a thing. The Rabbi is going to explain soon. That legetchil I'm not allowed to be shoyel shlemedas by a Jew. Why is another machlokes why? That means I'm yoytze b'David, but I'm not supposed to do it. And the Rav learns that it's elevated to do it that way. That means like this. I'm yoytze the sukkah. If I come into your house and I kick you out of the sukkah and I sit down and eat, I was yoytze the sukkah. Because karkin and exelis, and it's like I borrowed it from you. But I did a violent act, I shouldn't have done it. So sort of like that. It's not a mitzvah. Because mitzvah b'aver is on the Rabbanim. Here one with Dana Daraisa. Why it's not mitzvah b'aver? Mitzvah b'aver, Tosis explains only the Rabbanim ways. Tosis daf test. So Mela, we're going without that mitzvah b'aver.
So then the situation with the restaurant, you're fine. It's a shal shalom das, understand that you're fine.
That's the thing. But you shouldn't do it. But if you did it, you know, there's b'di'evet and like a tchila. B'di'evet, you moved in the restaurant, you sat in the sukkah without his permission, you yoytza. But you shouldn't have done it because you were shoy shalom das.
If you did it, shalom das, is that the exact same thing as against his das?
Yeah, shoy shalom das against his das.
Same thing, meaning, if this guy doesn't know you're in the sukkah, or if he knows and he's saying get out, but you're sitting there, what do you call it? It's exactly the same.
So,
What if the sukkah was on public property, like you
in a minute he's going to explain that. He's going to come to it. Say this again, is one? That's in the Achronim. The Bir Halacha wants to say that it's only karka if you fastened it to the ground, the sukkah. If you have a sukkah that's, your sukkah is fastened to the ground, you have a sukkah in the backyard? It's not fastened to the ground. You make it in a square so it shouldn't topple over. So according to the Bir Halacha, that's, it's not, it's an exelis. But the Rav, and then it seems to say, that's called karka. Since I'm sitting on the ground, and part of a sukkah you have to sit on the ground, and the sukkah is on the ground, it's real estate. We look at this sukkah as real estate. That needs a good explanation why. It's a lumdus why taka works that way. But you follow, we look at it as real estate right now. Yes. I go, yes.
What's the time frame for, can I wait a year, 10 years?
That's a good question. I remember this question. I remember.
10 years will give that.
No. He asked a good question. He's saying, you know, if a lot of steal something from a going to paying back, you know, how about it's like I told you once the story with the guy came to Reichman, the guy who knew him from before the war, and he asked him, can you lend me $5,000? I says, when you can pay me back? I mean, you need it, call me, and I'll pay you back. So you're saying he stole the $100, from the goy, and he says, I will pay you back in 50 years. And that's what he asked me. I don't know. I know. I remember thinking about it. I don't remember the answer.
That property becomes yours.
The $100 is yours.
Yours,
100% yours.
There's two parts. There's one part of stealing the property, the other is the private and the use of the property. There's two separate things. I can steal the property, but if he needs use of that property, I can't deprive him from that use. And I take his car, so I'm taking his car. That's stolen property. I'm allowed to do that with the intention of paying back. If he needs the car, it's a separate issue. He needs to use his car, it's deprived of the use of the property.
That's the part I'm allowed to do it. That's what it says. I'm allowed to do that. By goy, that doesn't apply.
If he wants to use it,
Yeah.
It's going to be consequences, obviously, but that is a very
if he wants to use it, that's something.
Yeah. No one likes, no one say you have a car and say, I'll burn your car, then I'll pay you the $20,000 for it. No one's really interested, though. Okay. So the Rav says, Kloime, he explains this. She'enele toiris gezel kemitaltalim, lamoi becheskes hagazlan, to stay in the cheskel of the gazlan, iribshusar cholduver. See, that's what it means. That metaltalim, when you steal something, a watch, it's totally yours, meaning it's full responsibility on you. Again, if lightning strikes it, like the boy with the pen. If he picked up the pen without permission, let's say to write without pen, and then the boy knocked it out of his hand, he has to pay $125.
What if the third kid picks up the pen with the intention of giving it back to their original owner, and while they're giving it back, the lightning strikes?
Yeah, then he didn't take it to steal it. That's something else. That's what I said. I asked him.
What the question was, why did he pick it up?
Yeah.
What happened?
And if he picked it up with permission,
What did you say?
if the kid was picking it up with permission, not without permission, and then it got knocked out,
Pick it up with permission. And for what? As a shoyl? Or just to give to look at it? That's a machoikis. It's a boye de leifshita in the sechtes buvakama. If you remember which daf, that the Gemara says, if I ask you to lend me something, I don't want to use it. I'll tell you what the Gemara says. Don't get excited. The Gemara says, I lived in another street, and there was a guy across the street. He used to rent a Rolls Royce. He rented an apartment. Imagine, he lived in Orange Drive, rented an apartment, but he knew music business, and every so and so he would rent a Rolls Royce. So my neighbor said, I asked him, he says, I have to arrive at these meetings with a Rolls Royce. I don't have money, because I used to big in the music, but he has to look. So the Gemara says, what happens if a guy puts two shoyrim? I want to borrow from you 2 ox. I'm not going to use it. All I want you to park the shoyrim on my property. People are going to pass by and say, this guy's a wealthy guy. And his credit rating will fly through the roof. A rich guy told me, Leibchen Shlemekes told me once, when a guy arrives to me in business meeting with a Rolls Royce, I don't do business with him. I don't need him. That means he doesn't have money. He has to come with the Rolls Royce. He doesn't have money. But anyways, but that's the Gemara as a boy. So the Gemara as a boy, you become a shoyel on it and now. So if you picked it up to look at it, that's a question in the Gemara. But rather happens he picked up the pen to give it back to him. It's not a shoyel. He picked it up to write with it. Then he was a shoyel shleimedas. And the din Torah, if you really want to interested, because the boy ran into him. So does he have to pay? Well, the truth is, no, because children in class, 13-year-olds, run around all day long. I mean, that's just part of being a 13-year-old. I mean, there's a din, if you run on the street, you're not supposed to run, you're mazik, you're mechuyev to pay. My question was, which 13-year-old in the class? It's recess. That's what the children are, it's a mazel to have recess, 13-year-olds. I don't know, to have to get up and jump. That's just part of recess. That can't be. But so Mele, he didn't do anything wrong. So if the boy picked up the pen to write, he was a shoish lamidas, he became a ganef on it. But if I move into someone's property without permission, and better, the Gemara has a case, and the goyim came and foreclosed on the property. You know what I mean? And they thought it was my property. I don't have to pay the guy. I never was able to steal the property. Understand? Property cannot be, it's never yours, and whatsoever. That's what means calculating zealous. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah? It makes sense?
Property was still by deeds though, and if you file a case.
That's how it becomes a kinyan. Now I'm saying if I steal.
You can't say you said you can't steal property.
That means if I've chased someone off the property, I tell them, I don't want to see you 50 yards, or they'll blow your head away. So you're miyash, it belongs to you, doesn't make a difference.
Right, but if the gunner filed the deed.
Doesn't make a difference.
What if he's never miyash?
Doesn't make a difference.
I don't understand. Let's say you filed.
That's one of the biggest rayas. I want to tell you something. One of the biggest rayas, one day we'll explain barichas, that there is no din in the mechisa dina. Because there always was din in mechisa if you're chasing. But the goyim, there was karka, if it was stolen, after a certain amount of years, when it became theirs, if you didn't come. The goyim have such rules, even in America. I don't know, there's not years. The goyim have such a law, even in America was stolen. The ones asked the lawyer, even in America, a property is abandoned, no one does a certain amount of years, if you move it there, you could acquire ownership. There's such a concept.
Adverse possession. You move into someone's property, you're there 10 years,
some certain amount, but he had to be out of it a certain amount. It was the whole thing. So that the Torah doesn't say. And the Gemara says like this: do not go to the goy yard and cut a schach or vankere, the hadassim, because maybe generations ago he stole this from me. I Dina Machisa, Dina says it's his. So Dina Machisa never overrides Dina Yisrael. That's a clown. You understand? That's what you always people ask. That means the land of the law doesn't supersede the land of the halacha of the Torah. I mean, the Torah says that the karken zealous. So the piece of property that's in Hungary that my grandfather had, that piece of property belongs to the Kleiner or all the grandchildren. It's not such expensive property. It's still a hick town.
Rabbi, you assume that whoever sold it to your grandfather, that it was really his to sell.
Where are we going?
Maybe they stole it from some other guy,
Right? Elchonon. You're right. That's a Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara says there's a concept of kibush. So that's a whole concept. How you say kibush? Conquering. The concept of kibush. That means when you conquer land, it does become the owners who conquered it. That's it changes ownership. That's conquering, not exactly. That means not a private ganav. If it's a whole army, that's a big.
Jews are warriors as well. Judea against Israel, they conquered land, became theirs. Or when Shvat met fight against Shiurim.
Well, not the land didn't become yours. No. Fakir. The Chazal said the land didn't become theirs. It's the opposite. That's why Binyamin was very wealthy after that, because there was 600 survived. Speak up. You have to speak up, huh? I know it's discussed. This is discussed in today's Paiskim allowed to talk about it. I don't remember the outcome. This question. Yeah. Now we was back koyvishit. That's the thing.
What about living in the West Bank?
We were, that was kibbush. That's for sure. That was kibbush. That's for sure. But then for Kenya. Yeah. Right. Yeah, but Rashi is explaining the goyim. That's true. The goyim are going to say that's true.
No. Rashi is saying that we should respond and they claim that we stole it. He's asking, we didn't steal it. We had the right to conquer it. But if there's something concept called king and kibush, so what happens if the Romans conquered us? What happens then?
I think, if I remember well, there's a Netziv. There's a Sefer called him the Netziv, and he talks about it. And I remember he comes out that Etz Yisrael can never be taken away. Things, if I remember, I don't like to say things I'm not 100% sure, but I remember he bases it on Yishalma, that the land of Israel cannot be. I have to walk quite a while. I saw this Netziv. Okay. See, by Binyamin, when they were kovish, you know the story. There were 600 survivors. I'll tell you a fascinating medrash. There were 600 survivors. So if you remember the pasuk, so they swore not to intermarry. And then they realized if no one could marry for Shevet Binyamin, the whole Shevet would be wiped out. So they said, we swore not to give you wives. Why don't you go in the vineyards of Yosef, and each one should steal a lady for themselves. Sounds very romantic. It says in the posting. So they all went. So there's a Muridiger Medrash that to take, and they're going to start screaming. And they're going to start screaming, and they're going to start screaming about what's his name. that they took. We said we're not going to give them a wife, but they were allowed to take a wife. Says in the Aftoide Mucha Chodesh, it says ki ben navas hamardis. No one knows what does ben navas hamardis mean. So that's Shul tells you his son Yonason. What did he tell him? What happened was Shul was very snuadik. He was a very sneezy guy. So what happened to Shul? Shul was embarrassed to go grab a lady. The only lady stayed. There's one lady. She ran into his hands. She was uncomfortable. No one came to take her, so she ran into his hands. He was a medrash. So he said, "You did like your mother. Normally a man runs after a lady, and your mother ran after me. Normally a boy stands up for his father, and you're not standing. You're doing the opposite. Just like your mother did the abnormal way. That instead of she ran to him. The son usually stays with the father. Now you're joining David. I'm terribly sorry. My wife just texted me. I have to pick up my daughter from the airport. She couldn't do it. I'm sorry about this. But next Monday, maybe the rabbi wants to learn the Doidim. I'm really sorry, but
When we turn the page, we'll just turn the page to the other side over here. Is this Rabbi Tauber's phone?
Yes.
There's only one after him. Give it to him.
No, it's not his phone. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what he did. No, he did not. Okay. Vareo Kishu'ula v'yada Gazlan, and showing the Bekitz Alter Rebbe is saying, and therefore this Sukka is only considered borrowed in the hand of the person who kicked out the real owner. And v'chol ha'mechuber l'karka, and anything that's connected to the ground, hareo k'karka, is considered land. So the Alter Rebbe is addressing the fact that the Sukkah is considered real estate. And therefore, she'eina nikla lahagazlan, and therefore the one who stole it from him did not acquire it. Elo harehu, turning the page to the other side of the same page, kisho'ul biyadai, it's considered borrowed. And the din is that a sukkah that's borrowed is allowed to be used, and you get the mitzvah. Ulefikach sukkah zu shehi benoya al hakarka. This sukkah that's built on the ground, hariya kisho'ula b'yad hagazlan, it's only considered like something borrowed and not like something stolen. And v'yoytzuhu ba yidei chavasai, and therefore this ganef, what we would call a ganef, but what halachically is not called a ganef, is yoytze the mitzvah k'moy sheyoytzem b'sukkah she'ula. And here you look on the bottom in Chav Zayin, and he's again emphasizing that's only b'di'evid. It's not just a contradiction, because the Alter Rebbe said on Halacha Gimel that you have to get permission. Then he says here you're allowed to steal, so you have to get permission l'chatchila. But b'di'evid, even if you didn't get permission, as long as the sukkah was connected to the ground, whatever that means, the Rabbi Tauber said there's a machlokes. Does it have to be physically connected to the ground? Does it have to be just on top of the ground? Then you're yoytz the mitzvah b'di'evid. Halacha hey. However, v'im gazal eitzim, but if a person stole the schach, he stole wood, and he used the schach to cover his sukkah, v'sichach v'hem sukkasai, af al pi sheloi chibron l'sukkasai, even though he did not bind it, he did not connect it to a sukkah, el hinichan al gaba sukkasai, he only put it on top of a sukkah, and v'lo yaso b'hem shum shinoi, and he did not make any type of change in the schach, be'inyan in a way that shebishar yemois hashana chayiv lahachzer ha'etzim atzmam lahanigzal. There's a din that when you steal something, if you make a change in the item that you stole, then you acquired it. And even though you have to make retribution, you have to pay back, but you don't necessarily have to give the item that you stole because you changed it. If you did not change it, and it is as it was when it belonged under the ownership of the owner, then you have to return it as is, because that's not yours. So, what does a shinui mean? Huh? You're asking what's the definition of a shinui? No. I stole. You had a shed of wood, and you had pieces of wood, which is good to be used for the schach. And if, God forbid, I stole it from you, that's called yes. That means I made a kinyan. I picked it up, but I did not change the thing.
The wrong order of putting the stock on top of the sukkah. You just all you got to do
That's a whole different thing. That's not called a shinui. That's about a goy. You're supposed to cover the sukkah with the schach and not a goy. So if a goy did it for you, so you pick it up and therefore you make the schach not kosher because there's a vacuum, and then you put it down yourself. That's something else. You made a shinui. That's for that. In other words, halachically you dequalified the sukkah, and then you requalified it. Then you, the Jew, did it. Here we're speaking about if you did not change the wood, meaning that halachically when you want to do tshuva, you have to give back the schach itself, because you did not acquire the schach, because you didn't make a change in it. So therefore, the thing itself doesn't belong to you. And if it doesn't belong to you, what did the Alter Rebbe just paskin? If something doesn't belong to you for sukkah, it's okay, because it's only considered borrowed. Here it's not okay. But because of the mitzvah of sukkah, our sages made a decree that the person who stole the sukkah, who stole the schach, only, even though that normally he would have to return the schach itself, here he's saying he doesn't have to return the schach. He only has to pay back to the owner the money of the schach. And he's not obliged to take apart a sukkah, which would have been ideally the law. But the sages, it's called takanas hashavin probably, that in order to enable people to do tshuva, right, we learned this, I remember learning it in other dinim, that if I steal a beam, and I put that beam in my house, even though I didn't change the beam, and normally I have to return an item if I didn't change it, but in order to facilitate people to do tshuva, they didn't demand of me to take apart my house to return the parts. So the same thing applies here also, that if a person stole schach, he's a ganef, but he acquired it. Now that he acquired it, now it's his, and now that it's mine, I'm allowed to use it.
So I call for it, we deliver 50 pieces of palm to my house, we come by, we take it, we leave $100 behind, and then we can buy it.
Correct.
If you leave no money behind?
You bring the money, you don't get the natural cost. Even though it's there, the it's now still. You leave those costs, I think you only got me $100, you don't.
No, I think there's still damages that you have. Maybe you have to pay extra to get over.
It's definitely not something that you should do. Something that if you did, you're a ganef. You're a ganef. However, the sages made it. No. Once you did it already, then you can lachatchila you can eat in the sukkah. That's something else.
The two different focuses. One, you're getting to the mitzvah. The guy
Sukkah.
who gets the mitzvah. The guy who lost it still has a right to claim against that.
He has a claim, but he doesn't have a claim in this case for the item itself. You can only demand the money. What's the question?
Suppose the guy that got it stolen from him, okay? Now he doesn't have stuff, and it's for Yom Tov. Can he go and steal this stuff back?
I wouldn't even say. I would say we learned in Choshen Mishpat. Let's say we just learned this together with Rabbi Tauber. That if my item is in your house, if my item, I have the right to go take it out of your house.
They said it's not yours.
They said that I don't have an obligation to give it back. Takanas hashavim.
No, they're saying it becomes yours. I don't know.
All right, I don't know. However, if the ganef doesn't even intend to pay him for the money, so then you can't say that it's considered borrowed or it's his, because he doesn't. If he plans to do tshuva, and really you would have to give him back the schach, and the sages facilitated, and they said give him back the money, and now the schach belongs to you. So now l'chatchila you can eat there. But if you don't plan to give him back the money of the wood, of the schach, then eina yoytze yedei chavasai, then you're not yoytze. And this is different than the sukkah itself. So in the previous halacha, when I steal, when I kick you out of your sukkah, even if I don't plan to do tshuva, I'm yoytze b'di'evet, because karka eina nigzelas. But here, if I stole the movables are stolen. If I put it into my sukkah and I do tshuva, then I can sit under it. If I plan to give the money back, seemingly even though I didn't do that yet, but if I did, you're asking, no. It's while I was sitting under the schach, what was my intent? If then I already decided to do tshuva, and the sages told me, okay, pay him back the money, then lechatchila eat there. And if not, let's then. But if you don't have time to give back, push it. Gzula hi b'yadei.
I have a technical question.
Yes.
If the schach's already on the sukkah, then we say karka and gazelis, and therefore if a person goes into the sukkah, he's not a god, and he's yet to speak, right? Because
B'di'evid. Very important.
The schach is on. But if I pull the schach off,
Correct.
Your sukkah and I pulled it off,
Correct.
Is that considered karka?
No, absolutely. That's for sure. That even if I pull the schach off someone else's sukkah, now that it's off the sukkah, it's no longer considered karka.
It's like lifting the sukkah.
Now it's a movable. It's a metaltalin, and I'm koinet. And if I would make a shinoi, then I'm yoitza also. If I made a shinoi in the schach, and I'm a ganef, and I don't plan to pay him back, I'm still yoitza, because now it's mine. Even if I don't pay him back, if I make a shinoi, because once I make a shinoi, once I change an item that I stole, the act of theft with a change in it, halachically makes that article mine, and I owe you money, sometimes double, but I owe you, but not the thing itself.
Provided that you are planning to pay.
No, I think that if I make a shinoi, no.
End of hay.
The end of hay is when he didn't make the whole hay, is when I did not make a shinoi. And therefore, when I don't make a shinoi, really, I have to pay back the thing itself. But the sages may facilitate it for me to do tshuva. But that's all because, theoretically, the thing itself belongs to the owner. But if I made a shinoi, no. When I make a shinoi, then it belongs to me now. I'm a ganef, but it belongs to me. And if it belongs to me, then I'm yoitza. Yeah. Not a lachas kama v'kam. Because the schach legally, once I steal something and I change a movable item, that movable item belongs to me, and I'm responsible.
Very end of hay, right? The logic that he said.
No. That's all correct. That's all because it's because the schach itself is not mine. It belongs to someone else. Why does it belong to the owner? Because I did not change it. If I would have changed it, then it belongs to me. No, it's not. When I did an act of theft, but I'm not sitting in a sukkah gzula. What happens if a guy steals money in a bank and he builds himself a sukkah? So it's a mitzvah haba ba'avera. Rabbi Tauber said that. Tosfos says that we're not concerned about this. We're not concerned about the mitzvah haba ba'avera. We're not speaking about the virtue of the theft. The question is, the issue is, I am not allowed to sit in a stolen sukkah. If I steal movable items, and I change its form, whatever that means. How much change is change, I don't know. But if it's considered a shinui, and the halacha is that the ganef now owns that which he stole. And the ganef now, if he'll do tshuva, he owes money back to the owner. He doesn't return the item back to the owner. So that's why he's allowed to sit under it. It's not sukkah. One little one, halacha halacha v'cheinim gozel sukkah she'enim mechaberes l'karka. Here it's interesting, Rabbi Tauber probably didn't read Halacha Vav. He was speaking about this argument. What makes a sukkah considered real estate?
No, this is when it's in public property.
So let's read. I didn't read it. Let's read it. If a person, so the Alter Rebbe in Halacha Daled was speaking about a sukkah that's considered real estate. Real estate cannot be stolen. You shouldn't do it, but if you did it, you're yoitza. What happens if you steal a sukkah that's not connected to the ground? For example, a sukkah that was built on top of a wagon, a mivtzayim sukkah mobile. It means that it's not even placed on top of the ground. It's placed on top of a wagon, or it's placed on top of a ship. Since the wagon itself is immovable, the ship itself, for many dinim, is considered immovable. For many dinim, it's considered karka. So therefore, this sukkah is considered a movable item, and therefore, if I forcefully told the one who was there to leave, then I stole it, then I'm a gazlan. V'yesh oleho toiras gezel, liyois emedes becheskas hagazlan l'chol davar. Therefore, I'm considered a thief. Ve'eino kishu'ula biyadoi, and I'm not like someone who borrowed it because I'm called a ganef, not a borrower, I'm a thief. Elahi harehi gezula tachas yadoi. And therefore, if this person who sat in that sukkah over the holiday of Sukkot, he did not fulfill his obligation of Rafi eating, sleeping, living, whatever the mitzvah of Sukkah is.
Unless you made a shinoi.
Could be. Before Yantiv. All right. Now, what happens if a guy steals a sukkah? Not the schach. He stole the sukkah, he kicked him out of the sukkah, or he picked up the sukkah off the wagon, and now he wants to pay him the money. Takana Sashavin. So here we say, Ein moyeloi klum. Here, the sages did not facilitate this tshuva. Shaloi tiknu chachamim came. The sages only decree that a person can get away with paying only money, not the item, even though you didn't make a shinoi when Ella im kain tarach halel of noisa, only when the person who taka did the terrible sin of stealing, but on the other hand, he did a mitzvah, which was, he troubled himself to build a sukkah. For example, a person who stole wood, and he at least had the trouble of building the schach. But this person who got it so easy, he did nothing, he made no effort for the mitzvah. The guy he stole already a ready-made kosher sukkah. He did not have to trouble himself for it. And he didn't spend any money, not effort, not time, not money to make it kosher. So here, the sages tell you, you want to do tshuva, give back the sukkah. It makes, you're not losing. It makes a lot of sense. Why did the sages make this decree? Because if a person is on the borderline, should I do tshuva, should I not do tshuva? So a person can say, I put so much effort, I invested so much time, I'm going to lose it all if I do tshuva, I'm not willing to lose it all. Here, there's nothing to lose. Give what you stole, you better lose because it's not yours. So that you give back. Lefikach. Well, it depends exactly whichever one you did. Even if it was in the case where I didn't move it, I told the owner, no, on the karka it's different. This is only for the boat and the wagon. Then Sonach lahachziro be'eineo l'bayla, I got to return it back. Halacha zayin v'chein im Reuven bana Sukka bekarkiyosei shel Shimon shelo midatei. What happens if Reuven builds a sukkah in Shimon's backyard? Which is again, it's stealing, but the land is not stolen. And now Shimon, that sees that Reuven built a sukkah in his backyard, what did Shimon do? The Shimon takav al Reuven. Shimon overpowered Reuven. Reuven built a sukkah, but on Shimon's backyard, Shimon goes ahead when he saw it and he kicked Reuven out. And he kicked Reuven out of Reuven's sukkah. The sukkah belonged to Reuven. That was built on Shimon's land. And Reuven says, perfect. Thank you very much. And now he has a sukkah. And Reuven is sitting in the sukkah. The Yashav Ban, Reuven is sitting there, is lo yotzi yedei chavasai. Reuven is not fulfilling the mitzvah. Why is that? Shimon is not yotze, because it's not that he stole land, fakert, he only stole the sukkah. So when do we say that if something is on top of the land, it's considered land? That's if the same owner of the land is the same owner of that which is on top of the land. So they're bounded, they're connected. So it's one thing. I can't steal land, I can't steal the sukkah. But if the land to begin with was Shimon's, so what did he do when he kicked Reuven out? He only stole the sukkah. So then the sukkah is considered movable. And because it's not on Reuven's land. So that's a third scenario. So you have on top of a wagon, or on top of a boat, or on top of your own land. So then we separate the sukkah, right? Makes sense, from the land. Sukkah is no longer land. And if I stole parts and I effort and I built it, that's one thing, even though I didn't make a shinoi. But here,
Did Reuven do anything wrong?
Reuven did something wrong. No, 100% Reuven did something wrong. Question is, did Reuven deserve? It's still different. His act of wrongfulness has nothing to do with the sukkah. In other words, what would happen if Reuven wouldn't have kicked him out? According to what we're learning right now, Shimon wouldn't have kicked him out, based on what we're learning. Reuven would be yoitzelat b'di'evad the mitzvah. Why? Because karka ein an exelis, it's only considered she'ula, and a sukkah she'ula is kosher. Here the chachma was that Shimon realized what happened. Shimon kicked Reuven out, and here Shimon cannot be yoitze because the sukkah is not his. Now he's asking a question: if Shimon improved the sukkah, And the Alter Rebbe is explaining that there's a certain amount of improvement for which we're going to have the Takanas Hashavim, that he only has to pay him back for the money of the sukkah. And once the sage has said that, then he'll be Yoitza. The question will be, the practical question will be, what does an improvement mean? How much?
If he improved it.
Enough for it to be considered improvement, then he can keep it, correct. Now, again, let's read it inside. And even though that normally the rule is normally the rule is whatever is connected to the ground is considered like ground, like real estate. And again, the karka and real estate doesn't have in it, you cannot steal real estate. And the most that it's considered borrowed, and there's nothing wrong with a borrowed sukkah. Nevertheless, since the sukkah is not on the land of the original owner, it's on his own land. Right, the sukkah is on top of the land of the gazlan. Should be the opposite. No. So 1 second. Who at the end? Who stole from whom? Shimon stole from Reuven. Very good. Shimon stole it from Reuven. Is the sukkah on the Nigzal's property? No. It's on the Gazlan's property. Because the Gazlan at the end now is Shimon. Shimon became the Gazlan. Good. So that's very good. Since the Eina Sukkah Menes al Karka Shal Nigzal, the Karka is not who got wronged at the end. Reuven got wronged. He's the Nigzal. This sukkah is not on the Reuven's property. It's only on the property of the thief, which is Shimon. It's his land. And therefore, so therefore it becomes, he acquires it, you do acquire it, there is Gezela there. And therefore, Gavaldik, he's not Yoitza. We'll stop over there. Therefore, he's not Yoitza. Gavaldik, because it's a Sukkah Gezula.